Jason Momoa spent his childhood watching a girl on television and telling anyone who would listen that he would marry her someday. Nobody believed him. She was already a cultural icon by the time he was old enough to dream, 12 years older, untouchable, a face that defined an era. And yet, decades later, he walked into a jazz club in Los Angeles, locked eyes with that exact woman, and nearly collapsed on the spot. What followed was 17 years of love, 2 children, a secret wedding, and a quiet unraveling that Jason himself only found the courage to explain a full year after it ended. The confession he eventually made wasn't about betrayal or scandal, it was something far more unsettling, the kind of truth that makes people uncomfortable because it could happen to anyone. Fame arrived, the man Lisa fell in love with slowly disappeared, and by the time both of them noticed, the distance had already become permanent. Jason grew up in Hawaii, and as a boy he watched Lisa Bonet play Denise Huxtable on The Cosby Show, with a fixation that went beyond ordinary celebrity admiration. She carried herself differently from everyone else on screen, a stillness and individuality that lodged itself in his memory and refused to leave. He told friends he would marry her one day, which they naturally laughed off, and he carried that quiet conviction into adulthood through early roles in Baywatch and Stargate Atlantis, neither of which made him a household name. By 2005, he was still grinding, still relatively unknown, still nowhere near the career he was chasing. Lisa, by contrast, had already lived through the full arc of fame, raised her daughter Zoe from her marriage to Lenny Kravitz, and arrived at a place of grounded calm that most people spend their whole lives searching for. The jazz club encounter worked the way fate tends to work in stories people later call inevitable. Jason saw her across the room and froze. His own account describes nearly passing out from nerves before forcing himself to walk over. And what came out of his mouth wasn't a rehearsed line but something closer to honest panic. She found it charming, the chemistry landed immediately, and 2 people who looked nothing alike on paper discovered they fit together in ways that surprised them both. He brought energy and laughter into her steady world, and she gave him something he hadn't realized he needed, a sense of rootedness that his restless personality had never found anywhere else. Their differences read like incompatibility on paper and functioned like balance in practice. By 2007, their daughter Lola arrived, followed by their son Nakoa Wolf in 2008, and Jason's identity shifted around those 2 children in a way that reshaped everything he thought mattered. Fatherhood anchored him through the lean years of auditions and rejections, and the family they were quietly building together became the foundation beneath all his professional ambition. They kept most of it private, no red carpet appearances designed to perform their relationship, no tabloid access, just a life they protected carefully from the outside. Friends described them as genuinely untouchable, and for a long time that description held. The secret wedding came in 2017, more than a decade after they met, attended by roughly 6 people and kept hidden until word eventually leaked. Jason spoke about Lisa in interviews with a devotion that felt almost old-fashioned, calling her his queen, crediting her with the confidence and stability that made his career possible. And then Game of Thrones happened, and then Aquaman, and the version of Jason Momoa that Lisa had helped build became the property of Hollywood on a global scale. The demands that came with that level of success were relentless in a way that's difficult to overstate. Filming schedules stretched across continents, press tours consumed months at a time, and the man who used to come home between projects was now barely findable between commitments. Lisa had no interest in that world, having already lived through her own version of it and chosen deliberately to walk away. She wanted quiet mornings, private dinners, the rhythm of a family life that moved at a human pace. Jason was now living inside a machine that moved at Hollywood's pace, which is an entirely different thing. Physical distance is manageable when emotional closeness holds. The problem was that the emotional distance was growing at the same rate. Jason admitted later that success had changed him in ways he didn't fully recognize until he looked in a mirror and found someone unfamiliar looking back. The man Lisa fell for had been passionate and present and grounded in the life they shared together. The man fame produced was perpetually in motion, consumed by opportunity, and slowly becoming a stranger to the stillness she valued. What had once felt like complementary opposites began functioning as incompatible ones instead. Lisa's ongoing co-parenting relationship with Lenny Kravitz added a layer of complexity that Jason navigated publicly with grace and privately with more difficulty. He praised Lenny in interviews, formed a genuine friendship with him, and absorbed Zoe into his family without hesitation. None of that erased the quieter reality that Lenny occupied a permanent place in Lisa's life in ways that occasionally left Jason feeling like an outsider in his own family arrangement. He never said this loudly, but those close to him understood it sat beneath the surface of an otherwise mature situation. Parenting style became its own battleground as the years continued. Lisa believed in structure, boundaries, and the kind of consistency that gives children a stable foundation. Jason believed in adventure, spontaneity, and the freedom to explore without too many rules. Early in their relationship, those differences had added texture to how they balanced each other. Later they became the source of recurring conflict, with each viewing the other's approach as a problem to be solved rather than a perspective to be respected. The pandemic removed the buffer that a busy life had quietly provided. When filming stopped and international travel halted and the whole machine ground to a pause, Jason and Lisa were left inside the same four walls with no external momentum to keep moving. What that stillness revealed was a gap that years of physical separation had helped both of them avoid confronting directly. Routine gave Lisa comfort. Confinement gave Jason something closer to dread. The forced proximity that might have pulled another couple together only clarified what had been drifting apart for years. During this period, Jason made a comment to people close to him that later became one of the most discussed moments of the whole story. He described Lisa as disgusting, a word that landed like a shock and demanded explanation. When he eventually explained it, the clarification was more painful than the word itself. He wasn't describing her appearance or attacking her character. He was describing what happens when admiration erodes between two people who once saw each other as extraordinary. The person who had been his dream since childhood had become someone he didn't recognize, and that transformation in his perception hurt him as much as it explained anything. January 2022 brought the announcement through a joint statement Jason posted on social media, written with a care and respect that surprised everyone who expected something messier. The language described transformational times, a revolution unfolding, a family parting ways in marriage, without parting ways as people. Fans processed it as a shock, while the couple framed it as something closer to an honest acknowledgement of where they had already arrived. The restraint in how they handled it was noted widely, but the absence of specific explanation created a vacuum that speculation immediately filled. The divorce finalized in January 2023, through a Los Angeles court, resolved without financial disputes, custody battles, or any of the legal warfare that typically defines high-profile Hollywood separations. Shared custody of Lola and Nakoa Wolf, no spousal support sought by either party, and a clean resolution built entirely around protecting the children from whatever pain the adults were carrying. People close to both of them described the approach as genuinely extraordinary for any divorce, let alone one involving this level of public attention and financial complexity. Jason's grief in the months that followed was real, even when his public face suggested otherwise. The home that had once organized his life around Lisa and the children now held only part of that equation, and the absence registered in ways that professional success couldn't offset. He told friends it felt like part of his soul had gone quiet. The double life of global star and heartbroken man was something he carried without much public acknowledgement for nearly a full year before the interview that changed everything. When Jason finally spoke at length about what had broken them apart, the answer he gave was less dramatic than the theories that had been circulating and more honest than anyone expected. Fame had taken him away from the life they built, he said, and the longer it continued, the more he became someone neither of them fully recognized. The mutual respect that had been the actual engine of their relationship slowly lost fuel. He wasn't pointing at betrayal or a single catastrophic moment. The relationship had simply grown in two directions that no longer connected, and by the time both of them understood that clearly, the gap had already become permanent. Through all of it, Lola and Nakoa Wolf remained the fixed point around which both parents organized every decision. Jason made it to key moments regardless of filming schedules, kept his relationship with Zoe Kravitz intact after the divorce, and co-parented with Lisa in a way that people close to them described as more functional than many intact marriages. Lisa created stability at home, while Jason brought presence whenever his schedule allowed, and the children moved through their parents' separation without being made to carry its weight. What comes next for both of them points in different directions. Jason continues moving through the Hollywood machine while apparently searching for a version of that life that costs him less than the last one did. Lisa lives at the pace she has always preferred, quietly and away from the spotlight that never really suited her, even at the height of her fame. Their connection through their children keeps them in each other's orbit with a civility that occasionally makes people wonder whether the door is fully closed. Jason has never stopped speaking about Lisa with admiration, and she has never publicly diminished what they shared. Some love stories don't end so much as change shape, and theirs may be one of those.